So whenever we have to make someone understand the location of a point, whenever we have to make someone understand the location of a point, we denote that point in the form of x comma y. We denote that point in the form of x comma y. We represent that form in that point in the form of x comma y, where x represents the x coordinate, which represents the horizontal distance, and y represents the y coordinate, which represents the vertical distance from the origin. I'll just represent it in this way. So let's say, for example, I'll just mark this point just to make you understand this point. So this point, we can see that this point is at a distance of 3 from the origin horizontally and at a distance of 2 from the origin vertically. So we have to reach this point, we have to move a distance of 3 horizontally and 2 vertically. So this point, which is over here, this point over here is the point 3, 2. We have to write the x coordinate first and then the y coordinate. So in this case, this point is 3, 2. So if someone tells you that a point is x, y, so you can directly, without actually doing anything, you can imagine in your mind only, you can just visualize that it means that it is x distance horizontally and y distance vertically. So this is a very basic understanding, and we are just going to start, so we should be well aware of this process first of all. So this point is 3, 2, which is over here. Next is, if someone makes us mark any point, we are directly able to do that because now the process is very simple. If let's say someone asks us to mark the point 5, -1. Let's say I have to mark this point 5, -1. So in order to mark this point 5, -1, I directly know that it means that I have to move 5 in this direction, and -1 means what? I have to go down -1. So 5 in this direction and then -1. So this would be the point 5, -1. This point would represent this coordinate 5, -1. So this is the point where the distance is 5 from here and 1 from here, but on the downside. So this would be the point which is 5, -1. And in similar manner, we can mark any point. So this is the complete basis that as to how we are going to represent any point. We represent any point in the form of x, y, where x represents the x coordinate, which is actually where x represents the x coordinate, which we can directly see that it is the distance from the distance horizontally, and y represents the y coordinate, which is the vertical distance. So this is the basic understanding. Okay, now and very important point, while even listening, just make it a habit to write something on your notebook, so that these points are just remain with you while you are not even just opening the class. You are directly able to see any such point while just executing. So we'll just add one more point to it now. Okay, and also note these two, in fact 4 points, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Also keep this thing in mind that the complete plane which we have seen, which is the basic coordinate axis plane, this plane is further divided into 4 parts. Just by drawing these lines, we can see that this plane has already been divided into 4 parts. So this part is known as the first quadrant. This part is known as the first quadrant. First quadrant. Just keep this word in your mind. You are listening to this word for the first time, but this is a very basic word. So this is the first quadrant. It is that region in which x is positive. We can see that over here x is positive and y is positive. So any point which we are going to mark in the first quadrant, we can see that both the x coordinate and the y coordinate would be positive, which is visible because it is here in front of us and it is a very simple point. Similarly in the second quadrant, so this is the second quadrant. In the second quadrant, x would be negative but y would be positive. In the second quadrant, x coordinate would be negative and y would be positive. And you don't need to memorize this thing. It is not that much of a rocket science. Whenever you will see it, you can directly observe it. So in the second quadrant, we can see that x is negative and y is positive, and you don't need to learn this thing. It is a very basic thing. The main task is that you should start with the visualization process. Once this process of visualization starts happening in your mind, this is something which is very basic. So we can see that in the second quadrant, x is negative and y is positive. in the third quadrant. So this is the third quadrant. First quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant. In the third quadrant, x is negative and y is also negative. We can see that over here x is negative and y is also negative. Let's say if someone gives me a point, and okay, let's complete this fourth quadrant first. And similarly in the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative. We can see that in the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative. So if let's say if someone gives us a point, for example, someone tells us to position this point 5, minus 11, and someone asks us that this point is in which quadrant. So we can directly see that x is positive, okay, 5, and y is minus 11, which is negative, minus 11. So it's in the fourth quadrant over here. This point is in the fourth quadrant. Why? Because x is positive and y is negative. So it would be somewhere here in this region. Similarly, if someone gives us a point minus 3, minus 4. So we can directly see that minus 3, minus 4, in this point both x and y are negative. So both x and y are negative, so we have to just push our mind to make us think that in which quadrant both these points would be negative. So we directly know that, okay, in this quadrant both are positive. Over here x is negative and y is positive. Over here x and y both are negative, which is the third quadrant. So it would be in the third quadrant. So this point would be in the third quadrant. So it is a very basic understanding, but any basic understanding obviously has to be done for the first time. So this is a very basic understanding. Just plot this picture in your notebook as well, so that whenever you are recalling any such point, you can directly do that in 10 seconds. So this is again a very simple process.